so bizarre to me because this doesn't feel like Reylo fiction. It feels like Adam Driver fan fiction.
Oh, no, that's because it is Adam Driver fan fiction.
The male lead is named Adam. It's all the descriptors of Adam Driver. This lady is also 100% sure Adam Driver has a giant dick.
Big dick.
Giant.
Welcome to another episode of Unresolved Textual Tension.
And today we are reading a book that both Katie and I have, seen and heard of, and, you're gonna recognize. And you know because, you clicked the thumbnail and, you're here. But we're
For
reading,
that exclusive reason.
Yes, but we're reading Love Hypothesis by Hazelwood. And this is an interesting book because I have never had the impulse to read it at all.
Jesus. You know what's funny is I was on the shop page, the front page of the whatever Apple Books is or whatever, or Apple, the audiobook stuff, and it was on the front page, and I saw it, and I was like, oh, that looks hella cute. And as I said it too, I was like, wow, that looks like Rey and Kylo Ren.
And this indeed is some Reylo fan fiction that got the serial numbers filed off to a point and has made its way, as a lot of fan fiction, not a lot, but as some fan fiction does now, into mainstream book media. I
would say, though, not that I've read a ton of them that's out there, but I've read 2. And I have to say this is one of the more successful as far as my value for how much I paid for it. It was actually pretty good. I mean, Maria and I had a little rough draft conversation prior to this as she was power walking on her little walking machine thing. And I was watering my garden, and we decided it's good enough. And so that's how I would like to begin this review.
It's not a genre that I am currently into. But I think for the genre, I don't think it's a bad book. I think it's fine. I'd say good enough. It has cute moments, and if you're if this is what you're looking for, it's not
you're gonna love it.
It's not the worst romance we've read. There's a lot of things that I think this book does that some of the terrible books that have romance at its center should have done or needed to not do. And so there are ways in which I think this is doing some good stuff, but I'm just going to be very upfront and say that this just isn't a me book.
What, you didn't like her just randomly sexually assaulting somebody in a building and that's the beginning of their relationship? Well, I mean, it's not technically.
This book is interesting because once it gets going, it's not too bad, but the initial setup and first few chapters are wildly painful. Wildly.
The first 2 chapters. Okay, so first of all, the little prologue. I don't know if it was chapter 1 or the prologue.
Let's do the premise before we get into too much specific detail.
Okay, so I won't go into it, but the point is I was sitting there thinking, surely this is not going to continue this way, and it didn't. Thank God. Seriously, though, it's because I did not know how I was going to get through it if that first chapter was going to be the tone for the rest of it. Mm-hmm. It was, I shit you not, painful to get through. It was so dumb. And then the next chapter really didn't help. The setup was awful. And as it progressed, it got better and better. And then, as Maria and I will discuss in more detail later, then the ending just was I'm I mean, it's a good ending, but you're just kind of where the hell did this all come from? And also you're oh, I see those little fan fiction-y elements kind of stayed in there towards the end, didn't they? You didn't really change this too much, did ya?
Like I said, I think there's some things that are working well here, but it also, like Katie said, the middle third is definitely the best this book has to offer. And it just struggles with how to get conflict out of a slice of life romance story, and it does so by using one of our least favorite tropes ever, which is the mustache twirling villain.
That's essays people, and is just there is no dimension really to, and it happens suddenly too. It almost kind of feels like the author was just I'm done, and then just wrapped it up. Yeah. Because I felt there were also subtler moments of conflict of, how Maria just said, it seems like she struggled to find slice of life conflict. Actually, I feel like there were some moments where she really successfully portrayed that in a way that was very satisfying. But then again, the overarching plot's conflict, that's what she struggles with, like that big bad, like the end all be all issue. It's because
the climax. She struggles finding out of, and the thing is, I think she had, and we'll talk about this, I think she had a perfect
she did
way to have a appropriate climax that would have worked well without having to pull out a mustache twirling villain.
I have literally 2 alternative endings that I feel like not in specific detail too much, but just general plot beats that I just feel like I felt like she was building up to it already.
Me too. Mine is one of those. So premise, as we mentioned, this is Reylo fanfiction, but this was obviously an AU for those not in the know. Alternative universe. It's where you're like, what if this fanfic, like these characters that I really love, like, we're in high school.
Or like worked at a college and one was a professor and one was a grad student and they're like researching microbiology. Well, it's not microbiology, but whatever, you know?
They're
like,
biologists.
Yeah, or coffee shop AU or hospital AU. Or an AU where they're in another universe where they're now superheroes and they weren't superheroes before. Anyway, so that's what that is.
Or like it's Star Wars, but in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's actually, I feel like it's a really good exercise technique for writers to actually employ, like, because you can take preset characters and basically play with them, and then you can focus more on plot and relationship building. And then, like, I feel like that doesn't help you at all with your character development too much as far as, like, you creating that character development yourself because some of those characteristics are already there. But I feel like it's a really good seeding start for a lot of writers to figure out what they like about their own writing.
Absolutely. I think in a lot of ways, fanfiction can be a really good exercise of, like, just number one, it gets people writing, it gets you creative, and you push the bounds of a lot of things, and also you get to explore like smaller moments that a lot of the time in big fiction, like published fiction, get ignored. And so I think there's a lot of value to it. You can definitely see the fanfiction hand playing its hand playing here, and this is the college AU that Katie mentioned, where Kylo Ren is a professor.
Call him Adam.
Yeah. So the other
Adam
thing
Driver is a
this is wild because this author went from being like, I'm gonna have this as a Reylo fanfiction, and then just named the Kylo Ren character Adam Carlson. He's a grumpy, mean professor that all the grad students are in fear of, who has what seems like outbursts and like seems angry all the time, and, you know, would force choke someone. What?
Yeah, but in an academic sense. So, like, I don't pass your dissertation. Like, that kind of thing.
Your research is flawed and you must start over with a new hypothesis. It's clearly Adam Driver. Like, I don't know if any of you watch Last Week Tonight, but a running joke on that with John Oliver is the things that he would do or wishes would be done to him by Adam Driver. Like, every time he talks about Adam Driver.
Yeah, I know. His big hands, which also is mentioned in the book.
Everything you've ever heard about Adam Driver, that he's just a giant man who just takes up so much space, and like you wouldn't think he's that big, but he is. Everything you've ever heard to describe Adam Driver is in this book to describe Adam Carlson. But anyway, opposite of Dr. Adam Carlson, we have Olive, whose last name I've completely forgotten. But anyway, her name's Olive. She's a grad student going for her PhD, and they enter a fake dating situation. We'll explain the reason later, but they enter a fake dating situation, and hilarity and hijinks ensue.
You know what really sells it for me, though, and I thought about it as I was reading it, the reason it actually works, not the premise for the fake dating, that's dumb, but the actual like fallout and the continue of it actually does work. It's because, as we're gonna begin, one of the characters has motivation to actually genuinely not be bothered by this fake relationship, and the other one also has something to gain as well. So, and then there's also another layer to it. So it actually makes sense why they would fake date once you get past perhaps the first 2 chapters, because the first 2 chapters are like, okay, you're trying really hard to make this work.
One of the things about it is the book clearly sets up 2 characters who you realize as the reader like each other fairly quickly. Like, you very quickly realize that Dr. Adam Carlson also has feelings for our main character, Olive, potentially before Olive has fully realized what her feelings are. And so it ends up just feeling like 2 people that are eventually going to date, but that, like, you know that stage where you're, like, friends with someone and, like, you're touching and, like, there's that engagement portion and you're just, like, you talk a lot and you're smiling and, like, when you stand, like, you lean into their conversations.
Yeah, you're, like, feeling it.
Their fake dating is just that
dating?
Entire initial stage. No, it's before you actually start dating. It's before you have the conversation where you like each other, but you haven't, like, come to terms with it. But you're just, like, so happy around that person. It's basically that period of getting to know someone and being into them, and then...
Which is really nice, honestly. I like that that's almost the entire book. That was so relaxing for me, for the most part.
This book is low stress. If there's one thing you want to know about this book, she's low stress, she's low stakes. You know that it's going to be a happy ending. If you need a break from some harsh things...
This is a good one.
Katie had come off reading a very good but very stressful book, which we will be reviewing next week. So yeah, that's the basic premise. And overall, like I said, I think for people who like this genre, this is going to be a very enjoyable book. It's kind of throughout, as much as there were points where I was like, oh, that's kind of cute, I found it a little bit stiff, especially, like, very, very much so in the first half, but you can tell as the author gets out, because, like, she really struggles setting up the fake dating and getting the dialogue feels very stiff and very forced. There's a lot of
weird extended periods of only towards the beginning, then again it settles into itself. But for example, there's a whole conversation about contacts for, like, a solid 5 minutes of the audiobook. Like, 5 minutes of just really bad back and forth. Contacts. What? You wear your contacts for a year? Yeah, a year, it's fine. They have an argument about contacts that does nothing.
Yes. And it's very, like, it just feels like the author is trying to get to the good part. Like, she needs to get through the setup, and then she wants to get through that. And once the setup actually kicks in and we're in the actual fake dating scenario, it is a bit better. The dialogue begins to feel a bit more natural. But for me, I always found it a little bit stiff. Like, there was just a stiffness to it. But part of that for me is this just isn't my genre, so my criticism is not going to be so much about how this isn't a book for me, but I do want to engage with this book as is, and how the people who are going to be coming to this for this genre are going to be engaging with it, because I'm a rational person. I can do that.
That's fair, because if there are new viewers, they wouldn't know. Okay, good. Yes, I like your disclaimer. Good job.
And so as much as I probably would have not finished this book if left to my own devices, or I will never think of it again. I think
God! I'm
not saying it's bad. It's just not for me. It's just not for me. But I think there are some. I think for people who like this genre, and the thing is, it is doing very well. Like, this book does not need any defenders. This woman, she published this. She's published a couple others. Her books do real well on TikTok because there is a 20-minute extended sex scene.
Yeah, there was a bonus chapter that was just porn. It was just porn.
Well, I mean, and in the initial, the chapter itself, during the actual book, it was also just, there's just a very long sex scene. And the thing is, a lot of people, they want their romance and they want their spice. They want a little...
Yeah, me. I really liked this book for many reasons. There's faults in it. But from a critical perspective, there's several things that needed to be worked on. But I know what this book is, and I liked the sex scene, and I thought it was one of the cuter ones. And it very much, it had me sitting there okay, sorry, husband, I would love to watch this movie with you, but I'd like to go listen to this sex scene upstairs in our bedroom. Not okay, wait a second. I didn't mean it like that.
Why would you think that.
Okay, look, I had a headache anyway, so I was laying down. But the point is I was like, nah, I'd rather listen to this. I didn't mind it at all. It was like not offensive. The bonus chapter one was offensive. We'll have a small little rant on that. But the one within the book wasn't offensive. And I liked the cute little moments. And I liked knowing that no matter what, Adam wasn't gonna bring drama to our main character, Olive, in a way that's like dumb. Like, as in, like, you betrayed me, or like, what, you're in, like, what, we'll get to it.
Yeah, and listen, you are right. So one of the things I don't like is when there's those like needless misunderstandings, and from Adam's side,
my God,
Adam's great because he just like, there's misunderstandings, but he's very chill about it. I have some words for my girl Olive.
Yeah,
she's so goddamn
what
thick
a
sometimes.
Fucking idiot!
What?
Oh my God!
Like the thing is, and like I get it.
She's
sort
immature.
Of. But it's not that. It's that the author needed there to be the author needed a couple specific things to happen.
But that's what I'm frustrated about. But also in a way, I have to admit though, that kind of, even though I personally didn't like it plot wise, somebody in graduate school making those decisions who's had very little, like, you know, considering her background and everything.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when Holden is like, oh, he's had a crush on you for years and wanted to ask you.
Oh my God.
She's
okay,
like,
never mind.
Oh my God, he's in love with someone else. It's not me.
She's, okay, no, all those moments pissed me off because I'm like, okay, this is needlessly obtuse.
It's needlessly obtuse, and that's the problem, that is the author's hand, because I think for the most part the characters are fine. I think like some of the side characters feel like their own characters. They're not as fleshed out as I'd like them to be, but they do have their own personalities and their own things that they're interested in. They don't just exist for the main character. And I think them getting to know each other, the like quippy, cute backs and forth, all of that is fine. But every once in a while, you can tell the author wants a little bit more that bittersweet
drama,
heartache. No, it's that bittersweet.
No,
like,
I know.
Oh, it's not me. And the thing is, I think as this author gets better as a writer, she'll probably be able to get there and create that a bit more organically and not feel like you just suddenly made your character very obtuse for the sake of the drama and for the sake of
it ruins the story so badly because it takes you out of it and then you're like, oh, this isn't a real character. This is just a plot tool.
Yes, and that's one of the problems where sometimes you have to let like the characters you've created and the plot you've created just be, and like maybe there is less bittersweetness to it. Maybe there is a little less tension in the way that you wanted it to, but it's kind of like sometimes shows are working toward an ending that they know they've written, like that they'd like to go to, but their characters have developed
how many
well
times
past
that happened?
Yeah. But they keep trying to shoehorn it in, and it felt a little bit like she had these characters and was trying to get to a place. And I mean, the easy way to do this was to have a female figure around Adam regularly that he was very fond of, and for her to mistake it as affection.
Yes.
Like,
yes. It was easy as that. It was as easy. I was gonna, when we talked about solutions for certain things, I was gonna say he could have just had a female friend or cousin that she thought was like anything. It could have been anything.
And like that's super done, but it makes way more sense than one of his best friends from childhood telling you to your face, yeah, he's wanted to ask you out forever, and you inventing another woman that doesn't exist, and you keep thinking about this other woman that doesn't exist throughout the rest of the book.
It's not even just that. The friend says he has liked you, Olive, and then Olive's like, oh, he must be mistaken. It's someone else. I'm like, no, he would have mentioned it by name. So how else would he know?
Exactly. Like she literally just it's very, those kinds of things are very frustrating. But I think for the average reader coming, because like this is the epitome of a beach read. Like,
oh God, yeah.
It's not.
It is
my
spring break material. Yeah. Spring break.
It's not my particular beach read. I like a trashy beach read, but I like mine to be like a fantasy trashy beach read. But this is a beach read. It is light. It is frothy. It's not here for a long time, but it's here for a good time. And like I said, you know how it's gonna end.
So, with that being said, if you don't want spoilers, leave now. Let's progress into the plot.
So, this book opens with one of the most bizarre, unromantic openings I have ever. When you talk about a fucking meet cute, This ain't it, Chief.
This is not a meet cute.
This is so...
Which is fine. It's horribly written. It's so
so
can
bad.
I say it, please? Because I literally hated this scene. Like, okay, so this book opens up with Olive sitting like on a toilet or something. I don't know. She's in a public bathroom at Stanford, right? Yes, okay. At Stanford. And she's there to, I think, tour the campus, if I remember correctly, or something.
For her graduate interviews. So it's like a college tour interview, meeting the faculty.
And we learn that her eyes are shit. And as a personal affront to me, as someone who has worked for an optometrist and an ophthalmologist before, when she said she was wearing contacts that were a year old, I wanted to tear my own eyeballs out because I could only imagine the pain. But anyway, so Olive has taken her, or has put her contacts in or taken them out, one of the two. It doesn't matter. But the point is her eyes are really blurry and she's crying and somebody walks into the bathroom and she can't see them. She only sees a watery, blurry image of a tall, dark, imposing figure. Wonder who that is.
Could it be Adam Driver? Is that you?
So he comes in and he's like, who are you? Why are you in my bathroom? And then she makes some pretty, not to use the word again, but it really does suit, obtuse assumptions about him, like that he's like a graduate. Like she just makes these random assumptions.
The first thought I would ever have if I was at
is this is a
Stanford,
professor.
If I was in a graduate office and somebody says, why are you in my bathroom? Is this is a faculty bathroom and it is probably a specific professor's and this is...
But she's like, what do you mean your bathroom? It's not your bathroom.
It's everybody's. It's not it's not your Emmy, it's my Emmy. Sorry.
What is that from?
My childhood, I guess. My sister would say that all the time. Except no, what she would say is I'd be like, we're going to Miami, and she'd go, it's not your Emmy, it's Daddy's Emmy. Because he would say Miami, and so...
That's actually really cute.
It's fucking adorable. But anyway, the way you said that, it made me think of it. Anyway, yeah, continue.
Yeah, no, but she just makes these really weird assumptions, like in her head. She doesn't say it out loud, but she makes, like, to you, the reader, these assumptions about this person. She's like, oh, he must be a student. And I'm like, why would you think that after he just said that? And he says it several times. He's like, my bathroom, my bathroom. And it's so stilted and awkward, their discussion. Like, it's so awkward that it is so repetitive that it is awkward enough that I can't recount the exact back and forth because it's the same thing over and over again.
And also because he's like, why are you crying? And she's like, I'm not crying. My contacts that are a year expired.
And he's like, a year expired? Eyes. What are you doing?
And he was like, you want to go for a science degree? Like a science PhD?
I know. To be fair, though, it really reminded me of one of my old roommates from college. In fact, Olive reminded me of a very specific person in my life that I went to college with. And she had the same demeanor, same personality, the same everything. And she would wear her contacts for the same reason. She didn't have the money to buy more. But she would wear old-ass contacts.
Why don't they just get glasses? That's the first thing I thought of.
But, you know, like, that's you and me. But, like, that person... Also, once she wore contacts, she did that. But then, like, she was also sciencey, and then she, like, started really caring about, like that type of stuff, and that didn't last long. But I'm like, okay, that's believable to a certain degree, especially her incoming graduate. But it's such a dumb conversation.
And especially because you can get a pair of glasses that'll last you forever. Like, I don't understand if it's price, glasses.
Yes, exactly. But no, more importantly, any person that is at that age that has contacts typically carries glasses with them in case one falls out. I mean, I say typically, like, not as if I wear contacts, but just as working in those offices.
She's 23 at the start.
So again, it's fine. It's fine. That doesn't matter. That's like, I have no problem with any of that. It's just the dialogue. The dialogue's horrendous.
It's so stilted. They go back and forth about
contacts for like 5 minutes, as I said.
And then he asks, like, oh, are you here because of the interviews? And she was like, yeah. And he's like, well, and she basically confesses to the stranger she can't see in his bathroom that she has doubts about whether she can, number one, get into grad school and whether she's here for the right reasons. And she goes into the, like, she wants to be here for her research, and the project she has is really important to her. And he's like, that's the best reason to be here. And she's like, thank you, stranger who I don't know. And he leaves. She goes about her day. And then we fast forward 2 years.
2 years. So fast forward.
It's actually 3 years, because that was
it's like 2 and 7 months or something.
Yes. So, because that was when she was interviewing for grad school, and we fast forward to 2 years to her being in her PhD. And so she's now 26, and she's living that grad school life.
Like hardcore. You're getting that vibe. If you want some of that college vibe, whether it was a good vibe for you in your college years or PTSD. Let's
just say, apparently STEM academia just sucks balls, because, like, man, I was in a literature department for my grad school, and it was great. Everyone was so nice. Everyone was so supportive. It was such a diverse group of people.
I would admit that it depended which advisor you had. I had an advisor that was okay. Honestly, quite a lot like Olive's advisor in this book. That was my advisor. Blindly enthusiastic, but has a little bit of direction for you. There was one advisor that was failed everyone, known for failing everyone. I took 2 of his classes. I'm like, oh, okay, so you mean you're getting what you paid for? That's what my problem was. I was like, oh, so you just didn't want to do the work, and he failed you. Of course he would. Why wouldn't he? Like, it was like advanced classes. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. So anyway, we get forward to almost 3 years, and we're in a hallway in the college, and she's immediately making out with that same person, as you and I, the readers, well know, but she doesn't. Please continue with
Yes.
I can't explain the scene. I hate it.
Yeah, so basically, it starts with a description of what's initially an awkward kiss that turns into a kind of decent kiss, and she's like, well, damn, that was kind of nice. And then she pulls back, and she's looking for her friend, because what happened was her best friend, a really cool girl named An, likes this guy that Olive went on a couple dates with, and even though Olive and that guy are no longer seeing each other, her friend An won't go on a date with him, even though she really likes him. And
that's a pretty baller move, honestly.
Yes, that's that, like, fantastic friend code. But also, what I don't like is that Olive going, hey, was never that into him, and I'd really like you guys to date, is not a, like, at a certain point you gotta trust people, like, and
it's a certain level of, but you know what's funny? Is that honestly, I think it's viable, because of the trauma she has experienced in her life.
It is. And
so that stagnation and maturity, it actually works okay. It's annoying as hell, but it's not bad. Like, I can accept it given her circumstances. And what's nice too is that when we get into her circumstances, they're believable. Like, it's pretty solid. Like, it's just anybody else. So it's also not overly dramatized. Like, oh, she's like, been wretchedly abused her whole life, and like, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, it was palatable.
And it also just feels like a situation that could happen without making terrible people who abused her, like we don't have like that kind of stuff. But anyway, and she told her friend On that she's actually going on a date with a guy, and then she just went to the lab to work on her stuff, and then her friend On ended up coming into the lab, and when she saw On, she was like, oh shit, she needs to think I'm on a date.
And if she thinks I'm lying, then she'll think that I lied to her about it and that I'm still into Jeremy.
And I don't want her to think that, because I'm not, and I want her to go out with him. So she grabbed the nearest...
First person she saw!
First person, didn't register who it was, anything, and just...
What a bizarre reaction.
Yes, and just goes, can I kiss you? And apparently doesn't wait for an answer, and just kisses the person. It starts with, initially the kiss was very awkward. Like, that's how this book, like, after the epilogue, that's how it starts. Anyway, and then, like, she ends the kiss, she looks to see if On was there, but On's gone. She's walked by, and she's like, what if she wasn't there? Did I hallucinate?
Yeah, okay, fucking hate that shit. Like, it was such a weird, guys, it was so weird. The description, she's like, oh, there's On coming down the hallway. She kisses, she looks back, oh, On sat there. She must have never been there at all. No shit, she's gone. She was probably walking. Why would she stand there and stare at you? And I just think that's such a dumb detail to include. I'm sorry, Hazelwood or whatever.
The first chapter is really fucking. It's a rough few chapters initially, Anyway, and then the guy's like,
You sexually harassed me. Who are you?
Yeah.
Or not who are you?
And he was like, did you just kiss me? And she's like, nope. And he was like, oh, okay. And then he's like, no. I think you kissed me. And then she's like, let's just ignore it. Don't worry about it. It didn't happen. And he goes, okay, I'm going to go write a Title IX complaint.
Which is so rude.
My first reaction would be, and again, this is where the author's hand, like, the author needs a certain outcome from this, so she's going to write it that way, but it just doesn't feel organic or like how two people would interact in that situation at all. But anyway, he's like, I'm going to go write a Title IX complaint, and she's like, don't do that. And then she explains the whole situation of how her best friend wants to date the guy that she went on a couple dates with.
I did like that he was going to go write a title. I mean, he wasn't obviously going to, but I like that he threatened it. I like that that was acknowledged.
So she explains the situation, and he was like, oh, well, I guess that's a decent friend move. And then she also realizes that, oh my god, this is Dr. Carlson. The dreaded Dr. Carlson. The one
who's known for failing everyone, being a dick, ruining people's lives, ending college careers.
Who's just like but who's also like the smartest guy to ever smart, you know?
Yeah.
And oh my god, I didn't even realize it was him, even though she would have had to get up so much on her tiptoes to reach his mouth because he's so goddamn tall.
It's actively described that way twice, that she had to go on barely tiptoes and she still can't reach him. So he would have had to reach down to kiss her.
How did she put her arms around his neck? Like did she literally grab him by the lapels?
That's the front cover, Maria. What are you talking about? Yeah, that's it.
She fucks off. And then the next morning, her friend Dawn is like, what the fuck was that? And she was like, oh, I just went on a date with Dr. Carlson and blah, 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 blah. And
then On proceeds to tell everybody.
No, well, not just that. As this happens, because it happens in the lab, Dr. Carlson, Adam, if you will, comes up behind her and goes, oh, is this your friend On? Because, like, he remembers the story that she told her last night. And On is now like, what the fuck are you, did you, like, you can tell that On's like, did you assault Dr. Carlson? Like, what the fuck happened last night?
Like, she doesn't believe it. She's like, there's something fishy going on. But then
Adam swoops in, puts his arm at the base of her back, and is like, oh, hi, how are you doing? Oh, On, I've heard so much about you.
And from that moment on, I was like, oh, he's in love with her. Goes up behind some rando who assaulted you and just, like, plays into it.
Plays into their elaborate lie to their friend. Wild. Fucking wild. But anyway, so thus starts the rumor, because On tells Jeremy. Jeremy's the guy that Olive had gone out with on a couple dates. Jeremy tells everybody else. Everyone is immediately like, oh my god, what's happening? And she goes to Dr. Carlson to be like, hey, by the way, the faculty's probably going to hear about this, but everybody thinks we're dating.
You know what I have to say is I really appreciate how polite they are and respectful they are to one another. Like, ignoring the sexual assault, basically, but ignoring that premise. What is nice is they are characterized as being quite respectful and understanding of one another, to a fault in some instances.
Thoughtful. Like, they're both very her first thought is, oh my god, I need to tell him so he's aware of the situation.
I loved that. It's so unselfish, and that's kind of refreshing.
But it also is just the right thing to do, which...
No, but how many books have we read where...
That's what I mean. It's nice to see a character just doing the right
thing.
Do
the right thing because she's a good person. And that makes you very enamored with Olive, in my opinion. Like, I mean, she's, thick, but, like, not in, like, a cool way. I actually don't know what her physical appearance is. There's few physical...
She's very thin. There's literally a point where they're having sex.
Oh, her ribs are showing, yes.
Where she's like, my stomach is concave, and I'm like, bitch,
shut the fuck up.
Tell me your and listen, I know that really skinny people absolutely hear shit about, like, being super skinny all the time.
It's very annoying.
But this author basically wrote a 5'8" skinny pretty girl with a tight vagina.
I mean, that is what character she is, though. Look, that's not out of the realm of being just a thing.
It's not. There are such people out there. They exist.
You know what's funny? I kept picturing, you know what roommate I'm talking about. I kept picturing her, so I was picturing actually a shorter person with larger breasts and, like, really curly hair, and I was just like, like having a hard time. Like,
Yep, that's not at all Olive's description.
it really took, but I kind of overrode Olive's description and inserted that because I liked it more.
Yep, and it's funny because one of the things I will say about Olive is she's a little, I don't want to say milquetoast, but she is
a little.
She's a normal, so she's not quirky. She doesn't feel like a manic pixie dream girl. It feels like she could use like a manic pixie dream person and some therapy, but she just feels like very normal, nerdy girl with a passion. Like she doesn't.
Well, you know what sells it for me is that the narration, including Olive's dialogue as well as her internal thoughts, are inundated with like little references to science and like, but it comes off as really natural, and that makes sense. It's because if you listen to the afterword, the author is in academia, I think, if I remember correctly.
She got her PhD in STEM.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of authenticity there, I'm assuming. So she feels like a real person, with the exception of the dumb like plot points that Marie and I will discuss.
Again, she doesn't feel, because I hate quirky, sassy like female characters, and she doesn't feel quirky. She just feels like a normal nerdy girl who has strengths and weaknesses, and almost like a character that you wouldn't expect. Like, you get the sense that she's very pretty and she doesn't know it.
No shit. Everybody's like, oh, you're so beautiful.
You're so amazing. Like, how do you... And she's like, no, I'm not. Who would even notice me? Oh, no.
Which is a little annoying, but it also does make...
But it's also, also the trope. Like, it's the trope.
Yes, but it's also so viable as well. With the... It's so interesting what you can get away with if the logic behind it supports it. So you can have a character that's like this and likable if it makes sense that they would be this, and you don't oversaturate your story with that quirk of some sort.
For the most part, she's just really normal feeling. Like, she has her eccentricities, but they're like normal ones. Like, she doesn't feel like not like other girls or a pick-me. Like, she just, like, feels like a person. A little underdeveloped in a couple of ways.
But that's human.
A skosh milquetoast. But for the most part, fine. Like, she's a perfectly serviceable, decent main character to have this story told from. And they both feel just like relatively normal people with, issues.
So, at this point in the plot, what's happening? Oh, that's right. He had just come up, saved her, On walks away. Rumors spread.
No, she goes to him to tell him.
Yes.
He's like, oh, well, wouldn't it work for you if we just pretend that we're dating? And that way, like, On won't get suspicious. And she's like...
I like that she gets suspicious and she's like, why would you be okay with that? And then she's like, is he kind of weird? I like how at first she does, like, she's like, oh, he, like, she doesn't say he's attractive, but there are attractive features defined through her perspective, so you know it. And then, but it's really funny because she's like, wait a second, I don't know if I trust this.
And basically, she says to him, I need to know whatever your reason, because he said, know that there's a benefit to me as well. And she's like, no, I need to know what that is. Like, you can't just, and he's like, okay, if I tell you, you can't say anything. And basically what it is that the department thinks that he's a flight risk, and he's going to leave the school and go to a different school. So they've frozen his,
a third of his grant money.
Yes, that he needs for a lot of the projects that he's working on, and he needs them to think he's not a flight risk. So appearing to be in a relationship with someone, she's like, okay, he has a reason, I have a reason, and so she ends up meeting up with him again a bit after, and she's like, okay, but we need to lay down some ground rules, Every this trope always has ground rules, and he's like, trope, what are you talking about? And she's like, you've never watched rom-coms.
Mm-hmm.
And there's very much a sense that she's a girl who watches rom-coms and who enjoys tropes and all that stuff. So she goes through the rules, which are like, we meet, it's only ever on campus, we meet once a week so people can like see us
for 10 minutes at the Starbucks, no sex, to which he balks at.
He's like, what? And then she's like,
did you expect?
And he's like, I'm just surprised you even mentioned it, that would be highly unprofessional. And then they also learn that like they can, as she is not one of his students and not on any of his
he's not a committee member of any of her dissertation stuff or whatever.
So they can actually date, and as long as like people know about it, which, you know, they do. Everyone knows. And she immediately starts reaping some benefits from this. People stop stealing her pipettes. She starts getting
That's so
stuff.
believable.
Yeah.
That's so believable. I have been through that pettiness. And let me tell you, the pipettes actually do get stolen all the time. And it's very annoying. From my little experience in the lab.
She immediately starts seeing benefits. Rumors her roommate Malcolm, who is this guy who dates a lot.
What's his name in the movie?
Finn.
Finn?
I think that was Finn, and I think they shipped Finn and Poe.
No, they did. That's what that was. But I couldn't remember the character's name. Yeah, so it's Finn, by the way, guys. Or Adam, what was his name again?
Boyega?
Yeah, something Boyega.
But anyway, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember Malcolm ever being described, but I'm almost positive.
Once. They're in the Starbucks. She's having a breakdown because she realizes she's in love. And his dark hands took hers.
This is Finn. And he's upset because she didn't tell him about, you know, you're dating him and why wouldn't you tell me? And he's really pissed. And then she basically confesses that actually you're the only person I can tell, but it's that we're actually fake dating because of this whole situation with On. And he's like, yo, this is a terrible idea, but I love to see it. Who doesn't like a car crash? He doesn't actually say that, but that's sort of the vibe you get.
That's the gist. Also, it's really, I can't, like, so Finn the character, I cannot imagine as, so, Malcolm is described as being somebody who frequently goes through flings, is from a very rich family, and kind of like,
it's in his scientists.
Blood, it's in his blood to kind of like go through academia, and he's just like, you know, getting through it, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna get a cushy industry job afterwards, fuck academia, and he's like kind of described as a really healthy eater, I'm just like, man, she changed this character, I feel like, the most into their own character, because this is, I feel like, not at all the movie character.
Yeah, it's one of the ones where it's you feel like the most difference. And again, part of this is I think it's either this is how it was and the way the fandom interacts with Finn is by changing him, or she just filed the serial numbers off and just made him a different character. On is what's her face, whose name I've forgotten.
That took me the longest time to actually realize. Not that I was wondering who she was, I just didn't think about it, and I was like, oh, she's that one girl.
What's her name? Rose?
Yes, yeah, I think that's right, actually.
Yeah. Anyway, that's On. But On, Olive, and Malcolm are really close, and this is the best friendship that Olive has had in a very long time. Olive's tragic backstory, yeah,
friendship, really.
Olive's tragic backstory is she's from Canada. She was really, really close with her mother,
a single mom,
and her mom died of pancreatic cancer. She very suddenly they didn't find it until much too late, and her grandparents had also died, and so she basically ended up going through foster care for a while,
for like a year.
Yeah.
No, it was 15 when it happened. She emancipated herself at 17, and since then has been living on her own, and so that explains a lot of things to me for her character, both for what she is capable of and her eccentricities. And it's such I just feel like it's a really good example of a good background for a character to explain their quirks.
And also that isn't like over the top, you know, that is something that like makes sense that you would end up and then getting to the point where you emancipate yourself, but also having to be kind of self-reliant. And she also just has like, she's a demisexual. She doesn't have like a huge sex drive for people until she's spent quite a bit of time to get to know them and develop a sense of emotional intimacy, which has kept her from having legitimate relationships most of her life, because most people, when they start, like when you go out on a date, you know, that's not how they're working. And so when they go
not just that, she also says to herself, and I think to Malcolm, that, you know, she has this feeling that if I love someone or get close to someone in such a close way like that, then I am afraid that they will go away or die and I won't be able to handle the loss of their presence. Because she goes through this as well. Not in such distinct terms, but it's basically that. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense.
It does, but she doesn't have this anxiety about Malcolm or On. So
see, that's what I didn't really understand.
Yeah, because it's not like she keeps herself back and she holds herself back from really bonding with them. Because, like, that could have been a really interesting arc of her really appreciating them, but she always kept back back a little. She never, like, when On's family came into town, she didn't get to know them. She would invent something to do, and, like, it could have been a really great conflict where her, at one point, On is like, Olive, why are you always holding me at arm's length? Why? You lied about this, all of this other stuff, you're just never honest with me. That should have been, that's the conflict. That's the conflict of this book.
It's odd, and it should have been too. It's because, like, among the other conflicts. But see, that's a really good point. It's because the thing is it doesn't really make sense why she would lie to On. But by implementing that idea that she's always keeping them at arm's length, then we can have the whole crescendo and climax of her coming clean, saying the truth, because On can't stand how distant they are, and then her learning, okay, I don't, that's perfect. That should be her character arc.
And On being happy that she seems to genuinely be, like, opening up to Adam, but also being sad that it's in a way that it's never happened for her, and, like, what is happening, and just the confusion, like why are you always, when my family comes into town, why
it would have made On a better character.
It would have made On a better character, and it would have made Olive a better character, because the idea that she is afraid of losing people who love her and that she loves should not only
be applied to some dude she recently met, and not her two best friends that she says are her family.
And the thing is, because there's literally a point where she's like, in her future, where the family she wants to be close to is Malcolm and On. But then why do you have none of the anxieties about them that you are applying to everything else in your life?
I thought about that a lot.
It just feels, because, like I said, good backstory, unevenly applied in the ramifications of it. And again, it's just, it would have added, like, I love slice of life when the issues are interpersonal stresses. Like, when the stakes are personal, they're small scale, but highly important to those that are interacting with it. So, tension between her and her best friend, and realizing that she has made a mistake by isolating herself to protect herself. That's a great conflict that could have replaced a dumb mustache twirling villain.
Also, what would have really been cool too is because she tells the truth to Malcolm. Malcolm could have been put in a really bad situation several times for covering Olive's ass on the lie, and by doing that, that's putting distance between him and On, and so he gets frustrated with Olive because by doing this, like, it's just another nice little. It felt like that would have been nice. And it doesn't have to be big and dramatic. It could have been solved in one discussion. That's fine, because Olive's emotionally, I hesitate to say emotionally mature enough, but, like, she could do that. And I just feel like you said, that for her character arc, I feel like I'd like to cement that into the whiteboard right there for how we would fix her.
100%. But anyway, so Malcolm learns about it, and then his character kind of disappears for a bit, and you basically...
So does On, really, for the most part.
You basically get her interactions with Adam, and it's a lot of them going to the coffee shop. He drinks black coffee. She drinks...
Figured.
Yes, she drinks frappuccinos with all the sugar and whipped cream and scones. She doesn't drink the scones, but she eats the scones, and she and they end up, like, getting, like, if they have to do this, getting to know each other, talking. A sense of intimacy begins to develop. There's a like, picnic that he asks her to go to.
To be fair, he does not invite her. What happens is Olive is like, okay, let's make this work. And I like her ingenuity. And she's like, oh, you're going to that picnic. And he's like, unfortunately, it's required. And she's like, well, we should both show up there together. We should both be together during that. So that way your, what is it? Your
chairman?
Chairman?
Dean?
Is that the right term? Dean, thank you.
The
whatever.
management.
See us together and think, oh, you're settled down, it's part of the plan. So they do these little little plans to meet up for all these things. But really, I mean, is there anything that really happens before the pushing the truck scene?
There's one thing that does happen. There's a guy, Tom Benton, that she emailed. She emailed a bunch of professors from other universities, because as much as she likes her current advisor is going to be retiring, so she doesn't have a ton of current grant money, so their lab doesn't have a ton of cash, and her advisor's a little bit checked out, and Olive is her research is about developing a way to test and identify pancreatic cancer sooner, and she needs more money and she needs a better lab for her experiments to work. And so she emailed a bunch of different scholars and academics about this to see about joining their lab. And one of them, only one responds, and it's this guy, Dr. Tom Benton, and he is from Harvard. And he's like, "Oh, your research sounds really interesting. I do like a similar thing, but different. I'd love to talk to you. I will be coming to Stanford in a few weeks, so we can talk then." And she's super pumped about it. And then she finds out that Adam actually works with Tom, and they're friends, but also collaborators on some of the stuff that he's currently doing. They applied for a grant together, which they got, Adam and Tom. And she ends up meeting Tom before she was supposed to because he sees Adam and her at the Starbucks, and then she gets introduced, and he was like, "Oh my God, I had no idea that you should have told me you were dating Adam." And she was like, "Ha ha ha." So that's happening in the background, and she has to do a whole giant report. He was like, "Hey, give me a detailed report about your project. Give me some of your protocols, a couple of other things, and then I'll look over it, and then, we can make a decision." And she has to put together the whole thing. And so in between all of the coffee dates and stuff that they're doing, she's also working on this thing.
At some point throughout this, we get the scene. Actually, wait a second. So we get a scene prior to that where Tom is giving a talk in the auditorium at Stanford, and Adam goes along with everybody else apparently on campus. It's because it's absolutely packed, and they didn't put him in a bigger auditorium, and there's a bigger anyway. So I like these little details though. It's because it makes it feel kind of real. But anyway, so the auditorium's super packed. Her and Ann are there to watch the chat, and there's not enough seating, so Ann weirdly bullies her. I feel like Ann should be jealous of their closer relationship or something. It's because it almost seems like she is already.
She doesn't even have to be. Ann is always like, "You should kiss him. You should sit on his lap. You should do this."
It's really annoying.
And it also, because people's relationships are different. Some people don't like PDA at all. Some people aren't comfortable, especially with a new relationship, which it is.
And it's a professional one.
One where he's a professor and she's a grad student. Now, granted, while it might be okay, she's like, "Oh, you should sit on your boyfriend's lap so that I can sit."
No, not so I can sit, so I can stand without this girl's elbow in my esophagus. Or not esophagus, my kidney or whatever. But I don't like Ann in this moment, and there's several things that actually made me kind of upset with her character where I'm like, why is she your friend? It's because it's not that bad where I'm like, oh wow, no, this is like really badly written, but it's not well written because Ann literally pushes her via dialogue 4 times to do this. And each time, Olive is like, "No, I don't want to. No, I don't want to. I don't feel comfortable." And Ann still pushes her. And I'm like, what the hell? Why is she being so aggressive?
And the idea is that Ann is like, "But this would be normal." And the author wants you to go, "Oh, she's saying no because, it's a fake dating relationship, but they can't let anyone know." But also, you are allowed to be in a relationship where you don't feel
not want to
comfortable
sit on your partner's lap in public.
front of his colleagues and your professors. That is absolutely okay. Dear public announcement to friends, don't tell your friend to kiss and or engage in public displays of affections with their partners. If they want to, they will.
They will.
Don't do that. Anyway, Ann does that a lot.
They have the sitting on the lap scene. But then we also get the
after.
truck pushing scene.
Yes.
Where there's a holdup in the parking lot, and Ann and Olive are like, "Ooh, what to do?" And there's a truck of one of the administration ladies, and it has died. The battery has died or something. And there's a lot of hubbub. It's because people are like, "Move the car," and I'm like, how is she supposed to fucking move the car instead? Anyway, the point is Adam Carlson comes to save the day with his sexy bod. And, which is actually, it is really sweet. But anyway, he's talking to the administration person and they're watching him, and he has her get in the car and he pushes this giant truck with all of his brawn.
So I assume they put the car in neutral?
They did. They actively say, she put the car in neutral or whatever, or he says throw it in neutral or something like that. But the point is he just pushes it, and it's realistic. I've seen people do this. It's fine.
What made it funny to me is how much she's like, oh my God,
his muscles.
So strong. I'm like...
I mean, I honestly, if I saw Juan push a truck like that, I'd be like, have you been working out? So, I mean, honestly, it's true. People do that. So, including myself.
And if you're into someone, you think everything they do is real cool. So,
yeah, so it's fine. It's fine. It's just funny. Anyway, so he pushes it off, and then On once again sticks her, like, I almost felt like she was trying to suss her out and see the lie, but I feel like that's going too far.
It's absolutely going too far, especially when you know Olive is a demisexual.
She's like, go over there and give him a kiss. It's so weird. Like, this is actually uncomfortable. And she's like, no, there's everybody here. I'm not interested in that. There's no reason to do that. But it's because everybody's clapping like, woohoo, yeah. It's because it was like a big hubbub and he cleared the blockage and everything. And they're like, woo, we get to go home because it's late at night. But like, she's like, yeah, go give him a congratulatory kiss. And so she goes over there and she's like, On made me come over here. And he's like, oh.
Well, I guess we gotta do it.
Yeah, but it's no skin off his back. And so they do a little peck, and it's nice.
And so next up is she gets 2 guys in her lab. One of them has Adam on his board for his committee, and Adam was like, your hypothesis sucks and you need to redo your research. And he's like, he basically failed me. And like, you don't fail. That's not how it works. You just keep going and keep working on your project until it gets approved.
This character's upset, as we later learn, and it humanizes him. I actually really thought this was a well done scene for like slice of life drama that felt realistic. So his name is Greg, the guy who got failed. He storms in the lab with Olive, and there's another friend who's ignorable. That's Greg's friend there, and he's trying to comfort him, and Greg's really upset because of this. And Olive is like, oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. Like, what happened? And she's trying to be a nice person, and he, in the end, ends up blaming her horribly harshly. And he's like, this is all your fault.
He's like, you approve of his actions. By dating him, you condone this.
Like, that has anything to do. He's like, well, like, if you weren't okay with that, then, like, he would change or something like that. Which, at first, I'm like, that's a little much. But, what's nice is Olive is like, dude, that's too much. Like, I have nothing to do with that. I've barely been, like, And anyway, so he really offends her, or not offends, but insults her, and then, like, flurries off. But his friend stays behind and is like, I'm sorry, he doesn't really mean that. His wife and him want to graduate together so they can live in the same area for their postdocs. And so that humanizes him.
And it does add to the like, people get frustrated, they get mad, and they get irrational. Anyway, she texts Adam about it and was like, yo, did you do this? And he's like, abso-fucking-lutely, I did it. His research was sloppy. I can't prove that. And then she's like, well, can you try say it nicer? And he's like, why? I don't need to be their friends. And they're going back and forth, and he's like, it's not my job to be friendly. It's not my job to foster like a relationship. It is my job to create responsible scientists that are not going to do shitty work. And if I have to scare people to do so, I'm okay doing that. And she's
but what's nice is that he says it in a way, though, that's very well constructed. Like, it sounds like a mature professor adult person that's just harsh.
She's like, well, fuck you. And then he doesn't respond. And then she's upset. And then she's like, oh no, I did a heckin' ruining. But then the next day is the picnic, the picnicky thing. And they get there. She's looking for sandwiches, but they got there late because of Malcolm and other stuff. And there's a whole thing about sunscreen. First off, just wear sunscreen. Even if you think you don't need sunscreen, just wear sunscreen. The sun is literally trying to fry your skin all the time. I say this as someone who
doesn't particularly need it in comparison to us lighter folk. But no, everybody, including my husband, who has not been doing it, he's like, no, it's fine, I won't get a sunburn. And I'm like, it doesn't matter if you don't get a sunburn. The sun is slowly burning a hole through our ozone layer.
Like, just put on the sunscreen. I don't care. Just do it. It's like, number one, you'll age better. And number two, less risk of skin cancer. I just put on sunscreen. Anyway, but there's this whole scene about sunscreen and how Olive, white very pale Olive is like, no sunscreen. And I'm like, girl, you probably need it more than everyone else here.
Which On tells her, and then proceeds to dump a bucket in her hand of sunscreen.
And she has too much sunscreen, and she's like, On, what am I supposed to do with this? And On's like, Adam, Dr. Carlson, do you need some sunscreen? And she's like, have you put on any sunscreen? And he's like, no.
They're playing shirtless ultimate frisbee.
It's that moment, like, because they first get there, and then On's like, oh my god, holy shit. And she's
where
like,
was he hiding this?
And she was like, what are you talking about? And Malcolm's like, holy shit, I wish I had known he had that under his shirt when he was tearing apart my thesis. And then Olive turns around, and there he is, shirtless, frisbeeing, you know? Gird your loins, ladies.
I'm picturing like one of those, those anime scenes where they're in the middle of an action shot and the sweat glistens off. What I was picturing is like him in the air and being like, ugh, and then like the sweat glistening in his, you know what I mean?
And his abs just glittering.
It was
in
an
the sunlight.
anime.
Yeah,
it was like Tennis Prince or
exactly.
or Prince of Tennis or whatever.
On is like, you should let Olive put some sunscreen on you, and Olive was like, oh no.
But he's like, yeah, sure, put it on.
And she's like, well, this might actually be good. All of your people are here, and if they see this, it might help. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. So she's putting it on, and they're like the little flirty McFlirt. Tom comes up at one point, says something unrelated.
Says something unrelated. I want everybody to know at this point, because this is important to me, Tom has so far been portrayed as a fairly average person. Somebody who's a pretty intense professor, who has a lot of, like, stuff writing on his research, and he's very well known and everything, but he's come across as a fairly decent person.
And just kind of normal.
Yeah, he definitely does. Because, like, first of all, he's the only one that responded to Olive's inquiry. So first off, it's like, oh, wow, somebody who reads their emails and is interested in
And his
students.
his initial email wasn't like, yes, you're hired, let's go. It was just like, let's talk. I'd be interested in hearing more.
When he meets her, he kind of does like a informal interview with Adam there, and they talk, and he pushes a little hard, but it's portrayed in a way you can tell he's just trying to grill her and see her motivation for being a scientist. And so it works. And so far, Tom has been polite. Tom has been nice. Tom has just been a person. And the reason I say this is because this is going to change.
That scene happens, and then, like, again, typical standard tropes of things. Her and him are getting to know each other even more. And then she gets... Tom tells her... Tom last minute is like, oh, by the way, I need you to get me that thing by Saturday so I can make a decision. And she has to, like, pull an all-nighter to do the work and get him that report. And then he's like, okay, great, you can come to Harvard next year. And she's like, yay.
No. He says, come to Adam's house and we'll discuss your, we'll finish our discussion now that I've read it. So she goes to Adam's house, which isn't just like an apartment or like it's a beautiful Spanish colonial. Oh my God. And he just came back from I'm picturing Maria, I'm picturing where where I live right here, like in that one really nice area right over there. I'm just imagining him running back with his little AirPods, the only white thing he's wearing because everything else is black. Anyway, so he's like, oh, you're here, cool. And so they go inside, and the house is not even described, so that's fine. And she sits down with Tom, they do a discussion, she explains some things, and then he's like, by the way, Olive, you're coming here next year.
See you in Boston next year. And she's like, oh my God, so yeah.
And then they go get their flu vaccines.
And he's a baby about shots. And they're flirting more. She's staring at her phone a lot. She's like doing heckin' smilings. And then they're having a go back and forth. And On's like, oh my God, you're so in love. I love this. I was a little skeptical at first, but you really can't fake that. And she's like, no, I'm not. I'm not in love. Why would I be in love?
I'm not in love. I can't be in love.
And then she realizes, oh no, I am. And she has like a whole breakdown, and she has a conversation with Malcolm.
Malcolm in the Starbucks.
On a Wednesday, which is when they're, she's supposed to meet with who. And she's basically like, it's happened. I've developed feelings. And Malcolm's like, I told you this was a shitty idea. And he's like, you should tell him. I've seen the way he looks at you. It's probably fine. And she's like, no, it would never work.
You can tell. Well, you know what's nice is that her dialogue isn't actually I think it's well written in the scene. I
Yes.
wasn't expecting it to be, but it's actually very well written. Her escalation of her trauma, like coming forth, like, and finally it bursts open and she's just like, everybody I love goes away. I don't have anybody I love. And again, this is the problem Marie and I were speaking about earlier about her friends being people she loves.
The reason it feels ridiculous to me because you're literally having a conversation with the person you've described as your family, who is the person you are, one of the people you are closest to on the planet right now, who has been around and stuck around for 2 whole fucking years at this point.
There's that, but we'll push that to the side for this moment. So anyway, she's like, I've been totally in love with him. And then who's behind her, do you think?
Adam Carlson.
Because it's 10 a.m. on a Wednesday when they're supposed to meet. And so Adam comes around, and guess what Olive's, I knew this was going to happen before it even happened. Like, once it was like, oh, he's behind her, I'm like, oh, she's going to do this shit. She says, oh, that wasn't about you. I'm in love with somebody else. Gag me.
He's like, that's okay. And then he basically assumes it's Jeremy and that she was actually in love with Jeremy and this was a whole elaborate plot thing. And like she you can tell she's a little butthurt about it and you can tell he's a little butthurt about it, but you know, like,
but he's very mature, honestly, too, yes, about it.
All of his reactions are very reasonable, like, throughout the whole process. And anyway, the next major thing that happens is 2 things. Number 1, she meets his actual best friend,
Holden Rodriguez,
who is Poe, who is
who is Poe?
What is that actor's name? Oscar
Isaac.
Oscar Isaac.
I mean, I'd have the hots for him too, just like Malcolm does.
Absolutely, him. Over
I mean,
Adam
far more.
Driver,
No offense,
yeah, any dude.
No offense, but Adam Driver's not my first pick.
I know the girlies. I know everyone really likes a broody bad boy and like the I can fix him thing or I can make him happy thing. But man, a nice.
I can't say anything though. It's because my husband's the former.
Yeah, but he also looks more like an Oscar Isaac than an Adam
I know.
Driver.
Isn't it the best of both worlds?
But anyway, so they have a conversation, and during this conversation, Holden tells a bunch of stories from their childhood, but then at one point Adam goes away, and Holden's like, you know, I'm really glad you guys are dating. He wanted to ask you out for years. He had such a crush on you.
And Olive's like, oh no, that must be another woman named Olive. I don't know.
Like she literally is like, oh, he must be confusing me with someone else. And
so dumb.
And I'm like, who? You've met all of his friends now. Who? And anyway, and then Holden's like, by the way, watch out for Tom Benton and watch your back and watch Adam's back. And so immediately I'm like, oh, okay. And I thought,
if Holden was a real bro, he would have been like, okay, so I'm a little concerned about this. I know that's not none of your business, but like, I would also, no, that's fair. I understand why he wouldn't talk to Adam if Adam like was really, Adam is quite close to Tom. So I understand that. But no, I feel like he should have just been like upfront. But
well, the thing is, he did tell Adam. He just had no proof, so Adam just didn't believe him about that other stuff. But anyway, and she's like, that's weird. And Adam had mentioned that Holden had a problem with Tom, but he thought it was just a personality quirk. Anyway, and she finds out a paper that an abstract she submitted to just do a poster board at a conference got accepted as on a panel with faculty, which is super rare for grad students. And she freaks out because she hates public speaking. Doing the talky talk is not her strong suit, especially in front of other people.
And what's nice is this has already been precursored a couple of times, but in particular, when she had her informal interview with Tom, she balked because he was like, all right, what's cool about your research? And she's like, huh? And she doesn't know how to explain, and her brain short circuits. And then, and it's also such a big opportunity, like just the stress alone. And then Adam, luckily, and this is what I really did like, Adam was like, that's a horrible question. Why would you ask her it like that? And then he's just like, okay, what is, and then it got very technical and she explained. So anyway, like it's been precursor that she short circuits when in company she feels ill confidence with.
She goes to her academic advisor, who's the head of her committee, and is like, oh my God, this is terrible. And her advisor's like, no, this is great. You're going to do fine. Like you're way better than you think you are. We'll work on it. We'll work on everything. Don't even worry about it. And it's at a big conference. And she's freaking out, and her advisor's response doesn't make her calm down. It's almost worse. And she also finds out that her advisor isn't even going to be able to see it. She's just gonna have to record it first. So she's freaking out. She ends up talking to An and Malcolm about it, and they're like, no, this will be good, you'll be fine, don't worry, it's okay. And then she's like, okay, well, we're gonna need to get a hotel. And An's like, oh yeah, we have our hotel stuff. And she's like, what? And An's like, yeah, I got a room with Jeremy, and Malcolm got a room with some other people. And she's like, I thought we were gonna room together, guys. And they were like, we assumed you were gonna stay with your boyfriend because he has to go.
This is my second gripe. As I said earlier, when we were talking about An, and how I feel like she's not really a real friend.
They've only been dating like 2 months, not even like.
But that doesn't matter. But that doesn't, I mean, unless I was married to this man or had been together with him for like 2 years. Why? I would never assume you were going to stay with, and even if I thought that, I would have been like, hey, are you staying with so-and-so? Because that's like a whole financial thing. They know she doesn't have money. Why would they? See, it's just, again, it's a plot. It's poorly executed because it makes her friends look like shit. Except for Malcolm, because he kind of like apologizes nicely. And he's also stuck in the pickle. Too. Because he's, keeping the lie for Olive. So it kind of makes sense. But, and also, Malcolm was, like, having a fight with his parents, and, he has his own life, and Olive has her own, so it all makes sense, but An's reaction seems very flippant, and she's on her phone, even, texting somebody as she's saying, oh, yeah, we thought you did, and I'm like, An's a bitch.
The thing is, it's not like they've gone to conferences before, and she stayed with Adam, like, this is the first time, and she's only been dating this guy for less than a month at this point. So why the assumption would be
they might not have an intimate life together yet,
or maybe Adam's sharing a room with someone else, because they it is such a weird thing to assume.
Also, that's highly inappropriate, honestly, at that level of things.
It's just the author's hand. This is one of those moments where she's struggling for how to create drama in this moment, like how to amp up the stakes, and so she's added this. Our girl Olive gets real upset about it. Adam sees her, he comforts her, she explains what's happened. He's like,
well, you can stay with me.
First, his reaction to the thing was like, oh wow, like that sucks. Are you like, presenting can be a big, and basically his reaction of not being super excited and pumped for her makes her feel better, because it justifies her feelings and also allows her to have her feeling and her reaction in that moment. Sometimes our go-to with our friends and the people we love is to say like, oh, it's not actually that bad, and it's to provide a solution, or just to be like, no, this is actually a good thing, you just can't see it. And sometimes you just have to let them feel their feels.
So wait, this is a really important lesson. I want all of you listening, not that I'm like a therapist, although I really wish I went to school to be one. It is so important, and Maria knows this very well. She's been employing this method for over a decade. It's really important to allow somebody to express themselves, and if you're unsure what they want in response, just ask them. Just say, do you want advice, or do you want me to listen?
Yes.
And then they will tell you, and they will appreciate that.
And sympathize, because a huge problem with me is I'm a problem solver, and sometimes and it's not that it can feel flippant, but it's just not, like, especially with Katie, if she comes to me with something, in the moment, she's not looking for a solution.
And sometimes it does, I know at this point in our friendship, obviously, and I knew the whole time, but the little, hamster running in the wheel in the brain is like, that's flippant. I don't want that. You're not acknowledging the pain I'm in. You're not listening to how much this hurts.
And I'm like, let me solve the problem for you. Because I think that's...
So just ask.
Yeah, and so learning to ask, and also learning to acknowledge that, because especially, like, sometimes somebody knows the solution, they're just not ready to do the thing, or they will do it, like, they're gonna do it tomorrow, but right now they just need someone to tell them, man, that fucking sucks.
Yes.
And Adam, without actually saying that, basically does that for Olive, and then they explain the hotel issue, and he's like, well, you can stay with me. It's a double.
And I love that she's like, no, it won't be a double.
And the funny thing, in the travel industry, a double means one room with two people in it. It doesn't. A twin is a room with two beds. I work in travel at the moment, and so when he said it's a double, but in America that means like it's two double beds. She's like, no, it won't be two beds. It'll be one bed. It's always one bed. And he's like, what are you talking about? Because again, he doesn't watch rom-coms. And eventually, because she's like, she tried to look for places to find places for herself and nothing was working, and he's like, no, please, just, I'll feel better. Like, because there's this whole thing where she was like, we're friends, right? And he was like,
oh my, I know. As soon as she said that to him, by the way, she said that after their discussion when she's like, I'm in love with someone else.
And also after Holden was like, he's been waiting to ask you out for years.
And she's just like, we're friends, right? And I felt so bad for fictional Adam because I was like, oh my God.
Because you can just tell he's like, I just got friend zoned.
I know. And he reacts that, like, you know, his jaw clenched or so, I don't know, whatever.
But then he's like, yeah, we're friends.
We are friends, for sure.
He relies on that in this moment where he's like, I'm your friend. I want you to be okay. And I will worry if you're like taking a 1 hour train to get to this. That's just, and he's like, also the overlap will only be one night, yada, yada, yada.
You know what's really nice, though, is it's also a nice depiction, is that Olive recognizes what he's doing as a friend and is like, I'm being a poor friend by not acknowledging the fact that he's offering me something because otherwise he would be worried. And I like that she's that thoughtful.
We go to the conference. She's getting ready the day she arrives. He's already been there for a night. She gets to the room and he's not there.
She gets dressed in her black professional dress that doesn't fit her anymore.
That happened to shrink in the... It shrank in the wash. And here's the thing. If something shrinks this way, lengthwise, it also shrinks this way. So I thought there was going to be a whole thing about how squishing the girls, but we've been told multiple times she has the
no
itty bitties. And it's where like a girl who actually needs to wear a bra. And as two girls with small boobs, like, you can wear a bra if you want to, but also it's better if you don't have to. Like,
but also people don't really care that much. I mean, in a professional setting, perhaps. But even then, so most dresses are built in a way, well, not most, I shouldn't say most. There are many dresses that are built in a way that accommodate for the, you know, the nips. And so,
her dress has shrunk a couple of inches, but her friend
so she's
Dawn
super
is like,
sexy. That's what it means.
Yeah, and her friend Dawn is like, it's still a professional length, and she's done her hair so it's wavy. She's put on a little dollar store mascara. Don't do that. Don't buy mascara. Like, maybe I don't know what they have at the dollar store. Maybe that's insulting of me, but buy whatever you can afford.
That roommate I had in college, this is why it reminded me so much of her. I genuinely thought for a second, I wonder if this is my old roommate writing this. Because she did that. And, like, it always ran. And it was always, you know, and then she learned what products were nice and everything. You know, it's like growing up with someone.
He comes and he, like, walks in and he looks at her and he's like, God damn. He doesn't say that, but that's what the scene happens. And she's like, oh, wow, it looks like he just had a heart attack, but I wonder what's happening. Like,
oh my God, I know.
Anyway, and then they realize
delusion.
The Delulu was strong. She's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go do my thing, and he's like, okay, I'll come. And then they realize that it happens at the same time as the keynote speaker, and he's like, oh no, and she's like, oh, were you going to the keynote
speaker?
And then, yeah, he is the keynote speaker, so he's gonna have to miss it. And she's like, it's okay, I have to record it for Dr. Aslan, so
you can watch the recording.
And so she does the thing. She does pretty good. She has a couple of little stumbles, but for the most part, and she's really happy that there's other people who are motivated about what she's doing enough that they're taking notes, you know, and engaging and learning. And then at the end of it,
overall, it's a very good experience.
Very good. And then as she's walking out,
our villain with the mustache
appears, and this is when he starts twirling, and he's like, Olive, great job, blah blah blah.
Oh, by the way, if you didn't know who that was, it's Tom.
It's fucking Tom, who I'm pretty sure is Hux from...
It is.
Yeah.
It's Hux. Except for he's blonde. So that I told Maria earlier, that threw me off because it was like, Tom's blonde. And I'm like, but Hux was a ginger. And I'm like, this should be Hux, but I'm confused now. Is he another character? I don't know.
It might be another character. Anyway, he's like, great job. And then he was like, you look... And basically, he tries to kiss her a couple of times. She's like, no, I don't like this. And he's like, what are you talking about? It's a little sample for next year. I know you wore that dress for me. Nice legs.
You fucked your way through these things.
You're a girl who knows how to work. You learned that the only way to get anywhere for your mediocre self was to sleep with professors. And I'm just the next stepping stone, baby. And we learn a couple things about Tom. Number one, Tom thinks it's okay to try sleep with one of your best friend's friends.
No. One of your best friend's girlfriends. Who he hasn't had a relationship for like several years.
And that Tom doesn't value women's work. And that Tom is also willing to steal the credit for other people's discoveries. So basically, out of nowhere, Tom's a shitbag.
Out of nowhere. Also, Tom may or may not, but according to Holden's suspicions, is a little gay for Adam. Which, I mean, who isn't, I guess. So he may or may not, which is such a nice subtle thing. And that could have been a really nice thing between the jealousy, professionally, and also romantically, and the friendship and the trust. There could have been such a hard dynamic, and like a real one, something that really was hard to navigate. But instead, he legitimately fully 180s on personality and just continues on as a mustache-twirling villain in a way that's like, okay, look, if he was really like this, Adam never would have been his friend in the first place.
Yeah, how do you hide it this well? And the other thing, because he's also like, Adam is the best at everything, so I get to take something from him this time. And I'm like, your buddy. Like, it's also just wild that he, because you also learn that he genuinely thought Olive was gonna be super happy to get kissed in this moment, because he's like, you wore the dress for me. Like, the Delulu is through the roof. It feels like it comes out of nowhere. And here's the thing, I'm all for Tom and Adam having a fallout as friends, and that being his thing that he has to deal with. The fact that, like, maybe Tom is jealous of Adam, and Tom wants to be the lead thing, and maybe there's a thing where Adam's like, your ideas are just wrong, and you're taking this the wrong way, and Tom handles it badly, and maybe he does something, and there's like that kind of reaction.
But no, that doesn't happen.
That at least feels like a organic to the situation, and but no, he's a mustache-twirling villain. She runs to her room crying because this guy literally, like, berates the shit out of her. And basically
sexually assaulted her.
Tell Adam, who do you think he's going to believe? The girl he's been fucking for a couple of months, or a couple of weeks, or his friend for a decade? And you're like, you're gross. And so she goes back to the room. She's crying her little eyes out, and Adam comes in and is immediately like, who did this to you?
I mean, look, that's true. I would do the same thing.
It's such a comfort trope of the who did this to you.
Also, can we wait. We skipped 2 scenes, and I just want to point it out because it was actually my all-time favorite thing in the entire book. And it's the smallest little thing, which really tells you how, like, little details could mean a lot to your readers. At some point in the past, while they were in the labs, prior to all of this, they were in the break room, and they have a conversation at some point. And what had happened was that Adam had gotten to the break room first and gotten the last bag of salt and vinegar chips, which is her favorite. And fair. And so then she went in there, and she was and honestly, this was portrayed so well. She was like, I was so looking forward to this bag of chips because I saw it when I walked in, and that's like the #1 best one in the machine. And I thought, if I do 3 hours of my lab work, that'll be the reward for getting through. And I'm like, oh my God, speak to me. I'm just like, that's my life. But anyway, so she goes there, and it's not there. It's because Adam was in the middle of eating them in the break room, and she gets a Twix instead. And she's like,
no, she goes, I wish you were salt and vinegar chips. And Adam goes, here you go. And she didn't realize Adam was in the break room.
And has a heart attack.
Yeah, it's a cute scene.
It is very, very cute. This is actually one of my favorite scenes of the entire book, but we're not going to go into it. It's because there's nothing like critical about it. It's just a very nice scene.
But the reason it's cute is when he first comes in and tries to talk to her, she's not really responding. And he goes, did somebody take the last salt and vinegar shift?
That's actually not where I was going with that.
Okay, go.
But that is really cute, but that's fair. That is what actually just happens there. He tries to lighten the mood by asking that, and it's really cute. No, all I was going to say is prior to all this, when she first gets into the hotel room, she's like, oh, yeah, I didn't get to eat. I'm super hungry. And he's like, okay, here. And it was established back in the break room scene that Adam does not like chocolate because of the Twix being there. And so anyway, he hands her, he rummages through his bag and then gives her a protein bar. He's like, here. And she's thinking, oh, it's probably from the airplane food. Like he brought it for the trip. And then he leaves and then she looks down and it's chocolate drizzled. And it never explains it to you. It doesn't tell you explicitly what that means, but those two little details are left in it, and it ends the chapter on it, which is in and of itself already punctuated. So what a great, I love that. That was my favorite, I know it's so small, my favorite detail in the whole book.
The chocolate thing is a great example of show, don't tell. He obviously brought that
Loves
for her
her
because he knew he was going to be rooming with her, and she's poor and doesn't have a lot of money. And she has a sweet tooth. She's doing the crying, and basically she decides to sort of tell the truth, where she basically tells him, after the actual thing went really well, but afterwards I overheard some people talking about how I was mediocre, that my work was derivative, that the only reason I was put on the panel was because of you. And he was like, that's false. The abstracts are, you judge them blind. You don't know who they are, whether they're graduate students. So they just picked it. And he's like, who said that? You should report them. And she, once she gets through it, and he comforts her, she cries on him, and then she ends up taking a shower. And she forgot her pajim jams.
Wait, no, that doesn't happen yet. They go out for sushi.
Oh, yes. Because she hasn't
They go
eaten.
out for sushi together.
Yeah, they're gonna go out to eat. He wants burgers. She thinks burgers taste like foot, which... Get the fuck out of here.
She's poor. What do you expect? She's probably eating cafeteria burgers.
Listen, she was like, let's do Chinese or Mexican or sushi. If she can have sushi, if she knows that sushi tastes good.
No. To be fair, I don't like most burgers. You have to really wow me with your burger for me to personally like.
But you still don't think it tastes like foot. She picks cafeteria sushi. They end up having a nice time. They go back. She's going to shower. She's forgotten her pajim jams, and he's like, you can wear this shirt, and it's a black t-shirt he slept in the night before.
And of course, when she comes out with that down to her thighs, a little oversized with freshly showered skin, he's gonna instantly get a fucking boner.
And he does. He's like chokes on his water, and she's
satisfying.
She's like, are you okay? Anyway, they try to watch a movie. They have a little quippy thing, and then shit gets steamy. They start, she goes to kiss him, and he's like, no, we can't do this. You had some alcohol. She's like, I'm not drunk. I had 2 beers, hours ago. And, he's like, no, you don't want this now. And she's like, I do want it. I want it right now. And she's like, maybe you don't want it. Maybe you don't like it. And he's like, he takes her hand and he puts it upon his.
I do like that, but also cringe.
I cringed so hard, and he's like, "You have no idea what I fucking want," and I'm just like,
okay, so this is where Trash Katie's gonna come out of the closet.
Yes, and where Maria is her normal self, and this is just this was
so
rough.
To me that's hot, not in a good way, in a 99.9% of the time, including this time, when I read it, I cringe. But the gesture in and of itself, for some reason, just rings a bell. And it's like, Lassie, come home.
Trash Katie.
And I cringed, and I actually fast-forwarded by 15 seconds. Because I couldn't handle it.
And she's like, oh my god, he's still turned on. And eventually, they go back and forth about it, and then they start doing stuff, and then he's like, oh my god, have you not had... And she's like, I have had sex a couple times in college. And he's like, no, we can't do this. You're basically a virgin. And she's like, no, that's not how that works. And also, it just, I don't like...
I do like that. I do like she calls him out on that, is what I mean.
I did, but I also don't like the idea of it being binary either. Like, it's also just, like, because it's really
No, she said it's not binary.
No, she says it is, because he's like, you basically are, it's been so long, and she goes, no, it's binary, you either are or you aren't. And the thing is, because a part of the thing is,
I thought the other.
If you are someone who, like, is in a same-sex relationship, just because you haven't had heteronormative sex, that doesn't mean you're a virgin anymore, like, or you're still a virgin.
If you've gotten fingered and had, like, a really sexual encounter, like, highly sexual encounter, I still think it's a sexual encounter.
And also, like, you can build up from that. And also, sometimes you can have had a lot of sex, but it's just been a couple months and things are a little tight. And you just, like, that's not a, oh my god, we can't do this moment. That's a, let's slow down.
Anyway, that gets steamrolled anyway. It doesn't matter.
There's a whole thing about him being surprisingly big and her being surprisingly small, and that needing to be overcome. They do. For someone who is so quiet and thoughtful in other moments, he talks so goddamn much during sex, and he pulls out all the classic dirty talk shit, and I'm like, I don't feel like...
No, he doesn't do that fully, does he?
Yeah, there's that
like,
part
is that from his perspective?
No, there's that part from her perspective where she talks about how he
fast-forwarded
was...
it.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
I fast-forwarded it.
Where
I couldn't handle it.
He talks about how good she is and how like there's
fuck.
Yeah.
Ew. That's so gross.
That just doesn't feel accurate to the character we've developed. I feel like he'd be a much more thoughtful, like, listen, I get the vibe that he is absolutely the person who likes to be in control during those things, but that he's also, like, quietly in control. He's very observant. Like, there's a vibe that I get from Adam, the character, and Adam in the sex scene. It feels like a different guy. It feels like he suddenly became Rhysand.
So.
Is this normal Katie or trash Katie?
Not trash.
Okay.
This is like, it's so cringy. I literally don't remember because I didn't listen to it because I fast forwarded through it. But no, what I was going to say is actually it's really funny because once the sex scene really fully starts engaging, I genuinely, and look, I could be wrong, I genuinely don't think that the author changed much from the original fan fiction because suddenly a lot of the verbiage is very Star Warsy. Not actually. It's not like they're like, and then he whipped out his lightsaber. But you know, yeah, but there's a couple of like verbiage choices that happen. You would have to read it, agree, disagree, whatever. But I'm like it was a sudden change. I was like, oh my god. And then as soon as the sex scene was over, it was done. But that scene was so intensely Star Wars feeling. I was taken completely out of it.
It just felt like it came right out of the fan fiction with no editing.
Except for, like, names and a few baby descriptions. Because, like, I bet you in the original one, they were in a hotel room or, like, at, like, a gala someplace for the, like, I don't know, the not the Republic, shame. The Empire.
No. I don't know. I think this was AU. Like, I think this was genuinely an AU to start.
No, I don't know. There's something about this. Okay, then originally it was Rey and Kylo.
Yes.
And there were more similarities between the original characters.
And he probably was angrier and had more daddy issues.
Yeah.
People who like smut are gonna love it. This plays into a lot of the things. The guy.
I mean, I still liked it.
The guy is very servicing. The girl is getting receiving, but is also being taken care of, but is also being vaguely talked down to, you know, like in that, you know, like respect me, but like be a little rough. If you like spice, you're gonna enjoy the scene probably. I don't know. I've mentioned it before. I am just so done with sex scenes. Just fade to fucking black. That's all I want.
It depends for me because I 100,000,000% agree with Maria. I've said it previously on other episodes, but at the same time, I actually liked the sex scene. It was not offensive to me except for during the ones that I fast forward, so none of it was offensive to me because I missed it all. But besides those like tacky moments, and let me just tell you again, there is a bonus chapter at the end of this, and it is so dirty,
and it's just this scene from his point of view.
So But it's so out of character. It's purely prawn.
It's a choice. Anyway, so they do the do, and the next, and she decides that because they only have tonight, they're not going to sleep, but he has to leave early the next morning because he has interviews at Harvard. Because in his mind, she's like, well, I guess she's going to be at Harvard, so I'll go to Harvard as a professor, which is everything his school was worried about that he was gonna do, and now he's doing it, and she's upset.
But it's really cute because he didn't know that was gonna happen. He didn't know she was applying for Tom's thing or anything like that originally.
But Harvard had previously asked, but he hadn't agreed to do an interview until after she made her decision to go to Harvard. But anyway, and at this point, she's like, I'm not going to Harvard. Fuck Tom. I never want to see that motherfucker again. So she's like, he probably wants to go to Harvard for his own. Like, completely missing the connections that are obviously there. She's like, oh, well, enjoy. So she wakes up the next morning. He sends her a cute text that is basically like, can we have dinner tonight? I'd really like to, or can you come by at some point? I'd really like to see you. And she goes and she's like, we have to end it. It's because she finds out that his funds have been released.
Oh my God, I fast forwarded through this. I couldn't handle it.
So the next morning, Ann and Malcolm find her. Malcolm has now started sleeping with Professor Rodriguez, Holden, what's his face's best friend, Adam's best friend, and they're like, oh yeah, you guys, we thought you were probably celebrating because Holden told us that his funds finally got released. And she's like, oh, his funds got released. And then she realizes today is the day that was the last day of their fake dating agreement. This was their end date. And she's like, oh man, I missed something. Before any of this happens, she goes to see Adam and decides to end things with him.
I didn't even listen to this.
Yes.
I couldn't.
Because she literally goes and he's so excited to see her at his other hotel.
I don't even talk about it. I can't.
Dude, it's my fucking job. He's so excited to see her, and she's like, well, today's the 29th. It's the day things, and he's like, what? And he's like, if this is what you want. And she's like, this is better for him. He loves Tom. I don't want to take away his things. And he's in love with that other lady who nobody knows exists except for me because I made her up. And she's like, she's sad. And there's this point where like they kiss each other and it's bittersweet. And she was like, this was great. And she's like, did she mean the kiss? The whole thing? His affection? And he's like, bye, Olive. If you ever need anything, please come to me. And you can tell that he's like so sad, and she's like, he's in love with another woman. I did this for him. And then she goes and she basically spends 2 days in the hotel room hiding from reality.
I skipped all of this. I could not handle it because it was so fucking dumb.
And then that's when Malcolm and Ann come, and she asked her advisor to send an email out on her behalf to other scholars so she can work with someone else besides Tom. And her advisor was like, please remember to send me your recording. So she goes, while Ann and Malcolm are in the room talking about stuff, she goes to upload the thing, but it's really long because she realizes it had been left recording too long, and she needs to figure out when to cut it. So there's a lot of silence that's happening, and she's talking to them about something. Like, the three of them are just having a conversation, mainly Malcolm talking about Holden and having, like, relations with Holden. And then all of a sudden, they hear Tom's voice saying icky, terrible things to our girl.
And they were like, you have to tell Adam.
And they were like, you have to tell Adam. You have to report this guy. This guy's an asshole. And so then she decides to go to the dinner that was after one of his meetings to become a professor at Harvard with like a bunch of Harvard people there to tell him that she needed to talk. Instead of texting him and saying, hey, can we meet up and talk later? She goes in person to say, hey, can we meet up and talk later?
Does she want to interrupt the interview or something?
All she wanted to do was go there and tell him to look at his phone where she was going to text, can I talk to you after this? Why she didn't just text him that, I don't understand, but she literally goes there. He immediately sees her, and
I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I'm glad, because if I had to suffer through chapters of their misunderstanding with each other, I would have jumped off a cliff, and I would have literally burned this book. But that being said, like, so I'm glad this is resolved very quickly, but also
he sees her and comes up to her, and then Tom's like, you can't just leave this dinner. That's really rude. You need to come and sit down. And he's like, leave, Tom. And Tom's like, excuse me? You can't just throw our work over for this bitch. And so then Olive just starts playing the recording of him being abusive and terrible. And he's like, it was you.
And then we get the forced choke.
You're the one that made her. And he literally like chokes Tom against a wall, but with his actual hand. And then the Harvard people are like, come Carlson, explain yourself. And he's like, sir, I need to talk to you later about something serious. And Tom's like, and basically they let everyone know that Tom is assaulted her and said all these terrible things and was threatening to take her work and make it his own. And so Tom gets fired. Her and Adam end up actually dating. They have a cute double date with Malcolm and Holden by the end of it. And then he does confess that, like, yes, he remembered that she was the girl with the contact issue and he's liked her ever since then, but he just watched her from afar, and he brings up specific things that happened throughout her first 2 years of grad school that she hadn't realized he was paying attention to. And you're like, dude, why didn't you just ask her out on a date? Like, the fuck?
I don't know. It's fine. It depends on the thing is we're never given enough of his character where we can understand why he didn't do that. So that's why Marie is asking that question. But it could also be believable that he wouldn't, because it's vaguely mentioned, oh, they're in the same department. But and also she's younger than him and a student. He's a professor. Maybe there was some type of but none of that is alluded to or explained. It's just Holden mentioned. I don't remember. There's a couple of things that are mentioned, but nothing that is from Adam's perspective where you're like, oh, but that's what Adam believes.
And then there's a flash forward to them a year later. They reconstruct the scene, and that's it. And
they went on a hike.
They did some hiking, and then you get the author's note about how she was in STEM academia and it was a rough world, and she's reclaiming some stuff by writing her romance thing, and then you get the scene of the sex scene from Adam's point of view, which is rough.
Which is not even spank bank material. It's so unfortunate. Also, if you read the audiobook, please don't listen to the scene. It'll ruin your day.
It is.
The narrator is so bad. It's a male narrator this time. It's not the same narrator as everyone else, which actually did pretty good job, honestly. I think she did just fine. I liked it. I think she did a great job narrating. But this guy, first of all, his enunciation just killed me. But also, when he spoke Olive's lines, he was like a manly man trying to be a guy. And it was so...
That's the book. It's fine. It's if you like this kind of book, you're gonna like it.
You will love it. Go buy it right now. If you don't like rom-coms in general, then you will not like this.
And
don't
if you don't like romance being the star of the story, it's not for you. That's it. Everything else is just around
negligible. Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. We kind of did this because we were looking for a book that would do well for the channel, and it was of some of the ones we've done for the channel that we thought would do well. This wasn't the most painful one we've had to read. Again,
oh my god, not by far.
Not for me. It just felt very stiff for me. A lot of the dialogue.
I never would have picked. Well, okay, so like I said earlier, I think I saw it on the Audible store or whatever, and I thought, oh, I would have liked to read this if it were free, and I didn't think much more beyond that. But so if it were free for me, yes, I would have read it. I would have never bought this.
You got 2 sales because we have a podcast. And yeah, I think for this genre, it's better than ACOTAR.
I will admit I will re-listen to only 2 scenes from this book, but I will at some point for comfort.
Okay, well, I gotta go. This has been great.
I'm busy too. I also have to go.
If you have any thoughts, if you've read this, if you know people who've read this, if this isn't your cup of tea, go ahead and comment.
Wait, we didn't do the plug
thing.
Oh
my god. We have a Patreon. There's 3 tiers. There's a cool Discord in the first tier. The second tier is our book club. And we have 2 live streams that happen. One where you pick the book and one where we pick the book and you get to interact with us. And then we have our Parasocial Darlings where you get to do the critique streams with Katie and Will once a month. And then... you also get to do Katie's
genuinely
Fictions
angry?
Corner. No, I need to end it. It's 12:18. I needed to leave. Join the Patreon. If you can't, you can comment and like and subscribe. Bye.